Hello and welcome to the Alamocenary Moment. My name is Aaron Spears.
Level tone there.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, but it was still showing like a 5-second timer on my thing when you did it, so it is
I'm watching the timer. I don't know. Half the time I don't know if this thing's even fucking working. So do you want to talk about your broadcast now? Do you want to brag about it?
I do. So for those of you out there listening, Aaron said I would get 1 view total, and I'm just crushing those numbers. It's like, what is let's see, between both Rumble and YouTube, I have 22 views. So what's that, like 22,000% increase?
One of them is me, and I don't want that one to count.
2,200% increase? I don't know.
I take mine off. I want my viewing back, actually. Can we just take one off?
You can't sit there and tell me you hated the new segment.
I like everything that we do.
Okay, but you said we. This was a me.
Yeah, but I am paying some bills, so I feel like I'm part of the two-man team here.
And I'm not trying to get rid of you, okay? For everyone out there, I am not trying to get rid of Aaron. It's just,
Why would you?
There are just times where I cover some things that we aren't going to cover here.
Why
Plain
would
simple.
you? Why would you get rid of 10% of the talent on this podcast, Brad?
Like, I have to ask you, Aaron, would you have wanted to cover synthetic embryos?
No, I would rather listen to you talk about it. Also, there are things I would like to talk about that I think you would not be interested in either. So there's an idea there.
Encourage you to do whatever you would call your Aaron cast.
I don't know what I would call it.
You know, because maybe this is the next iteration, right? Like, to make it to, say, the next step, increase viewership, like maybe we have to get out there a little bit more, put out some more stuff, and maybe we can start clipping like our single podcasts and start doing stuff on fucking Instagram or something. And then, you know, I always say, always be plugging. So plugged my podcast today to a hardcore CNN viewer, and that's
who knew there was such a thing.
Right. That's probably not the best thing for me professionally, but whatever. I was at a work event and I plugged the pod, and that's just what I do. I plug the podcast now. It's like I'm going to DC tomorrow to see a podcast be done in front of a, I guess, studio audience, if you would want to call it that, with this girl, Shannon Ford, who, quite frankly, listening to her podcast is not going to interest you. It hardly interests me, but it interests my wife. To be honest with you, she talks so fast that if you don't listen to the podcast at half speed, you're not going to fucking hear what she talks about anyway.
So I might surprise you here. I actually listen. I have about 90 subs, and I pay for about 3 podcasts through Substack and Patreon. I think you'd be surprised at what I do actually listen to, because it's kind of all over the place.
She is just generally all over the place. Some of them are like stories, or she's like a big social media influencer. She used to work for Kristen Cavallari, and she was like on her show, Very Cavallari, which is where I know her from. I watched that show because Jay Cutler was hilarious on that show. So I liked watching it just for Jay Cutler, because I didn't know he was actually kind of funny. Believe it or not, but he's like your regular everyday man. And she was on this show, and my wife's just obsessed with her. So without telling me, she bought tickets to go see her in DC, do this podcast, and she's based out of Nashville. And so we're going to DC for just one night, and we're going to go to a spy museum while we're down there.
The Spy Museum.
Yeah.
That's the only one I didn't go to.
So I'm going to check that one out because I think that stuff's pretty neat. And then we're going to go to this podcast. Well, we have meet and greet tickets with this chick. I don't know what I'm gonna fucking say to her. Like, I don't know. Like, we have nothing in common, really,
you know what you're
other
gonna do.
than that we both have wildly successful podcasts. Yeah, I'm either gonna hit on her or I'm gonna plug the pod, or both. I don't know. But it's, it is what it is. Like, it'll be interesting to see somebody who's still kind of like coming up. Yeah, she's successful in it. She has like she's has like a company that owns her podcast now. It wasn't like always like that, but there's like some media company that buys up, I don't know, certain podcasts. But she was already a social media influencer before she started her podcast, so she just had like an in basically already. Not like us, where we're basically nobody on social media.
We don't have anything.
Yeah, yeah, we have real jobs, so like we have outs if we need them. But of course, I'm gonna plug the pod. Like, I'm wearing my Eleemosynary Moment hoodie to the show. Like, I don't care if it's 90 degrees. It's the only Eleemosynary Moment thing I have, but I'm gonna wear it.
I'm gonna tie us to a podcast with Jay Cutler. Via something else I listened to this week. There's that woman Sage Steele, who was a reporter on ESPN for like 18 years. She like won her lawsuit against ESPN because they fired her for the comments that she made. Basically, like, you're allowed to be political on ESPN, but only one way, and she didn't have opinions that were that one way, and so
I assume that's liberal because they're owned by Disney.
You got it. And her opinions were somewhat uncontroversial, I think. One of them was the COVID vaccine mandate, which she didn't like. And basically, the three things that got her in trouble were all done on the now defunct Jay Cutler podcast. So she was on that podcast.
For real?
Yeah, she's the one.
He's not doing it anymore?
I don't believe so, no. This is according to her, because she was on Megyn Kelly's podcast. That's just where I listened to it. And it was cool to like hear her talk about her own family, because her dad was the first black football player at one of the military schools, a famous one,
like Army, Navy.
So, yeah, something like that. Yeah. And so there was an ESPN 30 for 30 on him. Well, so she's got her whole life is about sports, and she also traveled the world because he was in the military. And so it was interesting to hear her talk to Jay Cutler about the things that got her fired, which was the vaccine mandate, which she thought was unfair, which is completely insane that we even tried to do that. And also, she's biracial. Her mom is white and her dad is black. And she refuses to identify as black. And this made it a very controversial thing, because if you're biracial, society kind of expects you to identify with the
minority race,
which she wouldn't do. And I think these two things they're not controversial in my opinion, but because I don't think anybody should be silenced for any opinion, really. But it was enough for ESPN to send her to the cellar, and she won her lawsuit against them. So, and
it's
good for her, by the way.
interesting that you kind of brought that up. I grew up with a kid who was biracial, and he also identified as white for the most part, it seemed to me. Now, obviously, growing up, it was a little different. Like, I just saw him as my friend. Like, I didn't ever think about it. And until we were, like, I guess in, like, high school, where it became more of, like, an identity for him. And we grew up, I mean, from the time we were very young up through, like, high school. And then it wasn't until, like, then that he identified more as being black. I don't think people need to identify as anything. Like, identify as a human being, because that's what you are. Like, none of the other shit matters, at least not to me. But he was always kind of quirky. Like, he was very into, like, Japanese metal and, like, anime and shit, which in the black community, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, was kind of looked down upon for the most part. Like, you just weren't really into those kinds of things. They were seen as white or Asian in that capacity. So it's interesting that you kind of brought that up about how she identifies, and that she doesn't really identify as a minority, which she shouldn't. I mean, she should just identify as a person, but unfortunately we put people into boxes these days, right? Like any application you fill out, you have to fill out your race and everything like that, and quite frankly, they should do away with all of that bullshit.
I believe
useless.
most people hate that shit, and I also just could not care less. It to me is the least interesting aspect of you is your like physical characteristics, because it's not a personality, and you're making it
Right.
stand in for one. But
It's amazing, like the shit that you have to go through now. Like where I work, I have to do like all the harassment training and like all this other stuff. And there are some things. Basically, they'll like show you a video, and you have to like click on this red button every time you hear something offensive, right? And they're just like talking, and there's no like metric for how many times you click, like that you're just supposed to click the button. So I'm sitting there clicking the button, and some of the things that seemed so innocuous that they had in this training, where you're like, okay, that's like just a sentence. They were like, did you click on this? Because after the video and all the clicking, they're like, you should have clicked on this. It's like 50 things in a fucking, like 3-minute long like soliloquy sentence that were considered offensive. And it's like, again, some of the things just seem so innocuous that like you wouldn't have clicked on that because it's just a sentence. Like there's nothing crazy derogatory there. There's nothing like crazy offensive, but that's just the way that it's viewed these days, which is unbelievable, which it's part of why we see a lot of DEI people getting fired and shit like that now, because a lot of these companies that are going full on DEI are starting to lose employees, starting to lose market share. Obviously, we saw with Bud Light and everything else. And now it's like the people who were hired to be the DEI consultant and like all this other shit are losing their fucking 6-figure jobs because people are like, this is bullshit and it has to stop. Like, it goes too far.
The economy isn't in great shape, and if you're a business and you're trying to cut costs, that's the first thing that goes.
Don't tell that to Joe Biden. The economy's in great shape.
Bidenomics are failing us. I saw, but I don't want to talk about that right now. I don't want to lose the thread we're on here. I just thought it was interesting to hear Sage Steele from inside the belly of the beast that is ESPN, because I used to watch ESPN every day of my life. I loved that channel. I loved it so much.
Everybody did.
Yeah, and I can't go near it. I see stuff on there.
Remember when they had dodgeball on there? Not the movie, actual dodgeball, like professional dodgeball.
I would watch everything, all of it. I just loved. I didn't even watch the sports, and I still wanted to watch like Sports Center and stuff. And they actually had a lot of layoffs recently. Sage Steele not part of that, but when Roe versus Wade went down, they had moments of silence on Sports Center for it, and I was like, what in the fuck is this? I mean, I can't. Who's watching that? It blows my mind,
dude. That whole Roe v. Wade thing, and we've kind of talked about it before, is just so blown out of proportion because people think that they had a constitutional right to an abortion, and you did not. You had a constitutional interpretation for abortion, and that interpretation is subject to change, and it did. It is a states' rights issue. You need to elect the people in your state to do the things that you want and need them to do. And people just look at the federal government to supersede states' rights, and that's wrong. Like, that's not the way this country is set up.
That's a fundamental failure of the education system, though. Like, to me, the
100%.
very basic civics, nobody ever thinks about it that way. I think about it that way, but I don't know.
100%. Now, that being said, someone I know from high school who I was good friends with, he is super far left-leaning now. We don't see eye to eye on virtually anything. Did bring up a very valid point, and I will change my point of view and things like that when I believe I'm wrong or I'm presented with factual evidence, stating that certain states are removing like AP African history, like African American history, and they're kind of like wiping some African American history out of the education system. He's not wrong about that, and I actually agree with him. That's absolutely devastating, and especially because they were like AP classes, right? So like not everybody can take an AP class or whatever, and they're kind of elective. Why would you remove that? If somebody wants to take that, they should be able to take that.
Okay, so
like I don't agree with gender studies, right? But like if somebody wants to take it and waste their life on it, then they should be able to do that.
okay, so gender studies was something that was removed from New College in Florida by Christopher Rufo, who is the education czar for Ron DeSantis. So that actually did happen. Where did the AP African American Studies course get removed from?
Arkansas, I think he is specifically, or Kansas, where one of the two states that he's specifically mentioned. But
Kansas or Arkansas?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the reason why I ask is because there is also a media framing of this that's been really dishonest, especially in Florida, where do you recall the controversy where they were saying that there's some part of the curriculum that states that slaves gained skills that they would eventually use.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that, and this still has not been corrected by anybody in the mainstream media, but that the actual AP studies for the entire country has that in their curriculum. And it's also not really a controversial view. It's like, if a slave wanted to buy their way out of slavery, or they would use those skills, or in order to survive, they would use the skills they gained as a slave. And it's not saying it was good at all. It's just saying that was the reality of the time. And, So
I would say that it probably has been corrected, but the problem is that you read the headline and you never read the retraction, like, ever.
I don't know, man. I think on this one they're still saying that, because Kamala Harris is still traveling around the country bringing it up.
I read a statistic, and this was a few years ago, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like in the thousands at least of numbers of stories that like CNN had to print retractions on.
I mean, it's all the Washington Post does these days.
Right. But you never read the retraction. Nobody gives a shit. And that's why there's so much mis/disinformation out there, because it's more important, especially in mainstream media, to be first, which let's not forget the fact that you and I have been first on quite a lot of things here, i.e. Iran Reaper drones, and other things like that. Like, you and I have been first on that stuff, and we've been right. Like, that's just a fact. And they just don't go back and, like, they'll print a retraction, but are they going to put that on, like, a front page somewhere? Absolutely not. Like, you have to dig 17 pages deep of news to find a retraction.
Well, it's just like that fire in Hawaii. I go on it's been a couple weeks now, right? And they've still not accounted for like 1,000 people. And today there was a story about a woman who finally found her teenage son, and the teenage son was gripping the family dog, and they both died holding each other from the fire. Fucking dark, tragic, sad, all that shit. And you cannot find any reporting on those Hawaiian fires unless it's framed around climate change. That's the only time it comes up.
Oh, 100%.
Even though it had nothing to do with that.
Right. It's like I said on the Bradcast, too. Like, that book that came out about the Maui fires, like, 2 days after the fucking fact. And I told you explicitly this. It's going to be a climate change book where they just ultimately changed the picture through a couple fucking sentences or a couple paragraphs, maybe pages about Maui and the fires there, and that's it. But it's a climate change book. That's all it is. You have everybody, every media outlet, like, constantly railing. Every little fucking drizzle in Arizona is considered climate change these days. Like,
yeah, we had that
it's just hurricane. What we deal with. Yeah, they kept calling it a hurricane, there in California, and it wasn't. It was a tropical storm. Okay,
And it rained for 12 or 15 hours, and
it was a little bit of rain. Now it did flood at Dodger Stadium, right in downtown LA or some shit like that.
Dodger Stadium doesn't.
Who cares?
Yeah,
all
it
that
doesn't
did
flood,
was
though.
like wipe out some homeless people. It's fine. Like now they can find their tent a couple blocks away after
washes it
the
away.
fucking like it cleaned all the poop off of fucking San Francisco streets. So I gotta give credit to the Bee right now. They
the
are
repooping.
creating so many fucking good headlines that are just phenomenal about like one bedroom tents, like no bathroom, $180,000 like for a tent, or they're trying to figure out how to repoop the streets. Like
Yeah, there's good stuff,
after all
yeah.
the rain and stuff. The Bee is just killing it right now as far as satire headlines go, and I can't let that go unsaid.
Yeah, the climate thing is getting really. It's getting really. It's called like policy violence. I saw that something called something policy violence.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, the rhetoric is escalating because if you tell everybody the world's going to end in 5 years and it doesn't, then what do you do? You either say I got it wrong, or you say, well, now the Maui fire, or now it rained in California, it fucking rained here, or we were going to talk about the presidential debate last night, and it was held in Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee was experiencing a very hot summer. They had a hot day. It was like 98 or something. Well, I was curious because I'm like, I don't trust these assholes. So they're like, they should make all the Republican climate deniers go outside and do it in the heat. And I was like, is that hot? I mean, it's hot, but is it hot?
It's summer.
I looked up the highest temperature on record for Milwaukee, and it was like 105 degrees in July in 1934. I was like, of course they're full of shit. I didn't buy it because I was like, it is summer. I mean, it is going to be hot in places.
The temperature will go up. Again, you and I have kind of talked about climate change here at length, and that it is real, it is partially man-made and everything else, but like the alarmism that goes into this, I remember watching the presidential election for Bush versus Gore, and it was just like climate change, like Al Gore's been pushing this shit forever. Like 30 plus years, like Al Gore's been on this climate change, like fucking, I don't know, mecca journey. And
But it was global
where
warming.
are we at? We're still here. Like, remember when the fucking ozone layer was like the #1 catastrophe, like facing the world, and like, oh, it's fine. We closed that hole.
I just don't understand.
It's about policy, dude. And so
Well, it's about fucking money then.
Right. We're going to get into the debates, and Vivek Ramaswamy last night called climate change a hoax, and he said more people die from climate policies than they do actually climate change. And I don't know that he's necessarily wrong. It seems like a little crazy to think about that, but I don't think he's necessarily wrong. Like,
I mean,
it's about money.
You have to see how he frames it, because what he's probably trying to say is, we're not giving money to this, we're giving money to climate change policy, and therefore there's deaths of despair because there's fentanyl epidemics or whatever.
So
I mean,
his framing of it, literally, because I was watching it this morning, and I must admit I didn't get through the full 2 hours. Like, I
you
had
didn't
shit
punish
to do.
yourself? I didn't punish
myself.
myself.
No, but I was watching
I know enough
it,
of what happened, though.
Yeah, I mean, I watched probably the first hour or so, and it's very tough to get through. And
It really is.
Seeing some of the takes that people have had, and obviously we've already segued ourselves into this here, so we might as well just keep going with it. It's interesting to watch like liberal people say what they're gonna say on Twitter about this, right? Like, people are saying Mike Pence speaks very well. I didn't get that impression from Mike Pence at all. He basically speaks like he has an 8th grade education.
He had the most speaking time last night, by the way.
Of course. I mean, he's former vice president, so like he gets obviously a lot of time and everything. He has policy standards, and he has
okay.
a lot of stuff to go against, right? Like you can speak to a lot of the things that he's done or has not done.
I want to get this thought out because I'll lose it if I don't, because my brain is fucking mush. It's weird for Mike Pence because he's saying I did the right thing, which I believe he did the right thing on January 6th. You know, he certified the election. It was the right thing to do, and he said that. And at the same time, he is up on stage running on his record in the Trump administration, which there were actually some policy wins, right? Some wins.
And it's smart for him, considering how much Donald Trump keeps just like killing it in the polls, right? So, the way that everybody in this debate has to look at it is, what happens if Donald Trump can't run? What happens if he's in prison? What happens if he's blocked via constitutional amendment so that he can't actually run because of all of the shit that he's going through? They're all competing for the what if Donald Trump isn't there. Because let's fucking be honest. If he cannot be there, someone will win, clearly, because he can't. But if he is, he's going to be the nominee.
See, that's why none of these people, aside from Chris Christie, who, you know, is running for the presidency against Donald Trump. The rest of them are not. They're not at all.
This fucking guy, though, right? Like, he's supposed to be the debater, okay? Like, on that stage, everybody has said he has the most experience debating people. He's the guy in terms of debate. And he just falls apart, dude. He's a fucking mouthpiece. This guy locked down the beaches of New Jersey and then privately sat his fat whale ass on the beach by himself. Get the fuck out of here. Like, you've already lost complete credibility with me. And let's be honest, it's not that hard to lose credibility with me if you're a politician. But that is it. Like, and as soon as the moderators called him out for some of the things that happened in New Jersey, he goes, well, this is what happens when you inherit a liberal state. Like, fuck off, dude. Your policies didn't get it done. That's it. You can't just blame liberal fucking policies. It's the same reason why for the first couple years of the Biden administration, they were like, well, this is what we inherited from Donald Trump. This is what we inherited from Donald Trump. And it's true. Part of it. Okay, like they talked about the economy and they're like, well, we did this for the economy and it's so good. No, you inherited that from Donald Trump. You also inherited an insane amount of money that was printed by the Federal Reserve for the pandemic, which is caused inflation early on in the Biden presidency that you cannot necessarily blame on Joe Biden because that money was spent under Donald Trump. The only fucking person who called that out last night was Vivek Ramaswamy.
Okay, I want to mention something because I'm afraid you're going to do this, and I'm going to try to make sure you don't. Do not overpraise that man. He is a fucking 100%. Pest. I think he says so much bullshit, and he just is like this. He's like a little puppet version of Trump, and I'm so sick of this dude. And he's
campaigning off of Trump's policies because he knows for a fact that he is running so that if Trump does not, he can take that spot.
I don't even think that. I think I don't know what whatever his agenda is. He's got an agenda. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's to be in the administration, whatever. But he comes out and says some of the craziest shit, and then he flip flops. He must be on either side of every single issue forever. Like, he really
right. But
COVID policy.
People say that about me. And it's because I'm a centrist. I don't believe that about Vivek Ramaswamy. He's very much a conservative. He says it constantly that he's super conservative. He's Indian.
Yeah, but he's sort of not.
Most Indian people are super conservative. Their culture is just built around that, to be honest. And I'm not sitting here telling you that Vivek Ramaswamy should be the best. I like the fact that he's an outsider, but Trump was too. Trump was an outsider, regardless. But I never, ever, as a point of fact, even for the Libertarian Party, who I do champion just because they're the most winningest third party that we have, I do not believe anything a fucking politician says. Once you get into office, things completely change. They're different. You cannot complete the things that you promised and that you campaigned on. But it seems to me like that's why people don't actually really campaign anymore. It's all about fucking mudslinging. Like, if you noticed last night, all they kept doing was dogpiling on fucking Ron DeSantis, who had a horrible night, in my opinion, as far as the debates go. He did not look good. He tried early on. Quite frankly, in front of the camera, I don't think he does that well. Off the cuff, he doesn't do that well. He may be polling higher than everybody else, but Vivek Ramaswamy is polling in like third place, above all of these people who have all of this fucking experience. Anybody who believes Chris Christie should be president is a fucking moron. And please, to God, stay home.
Chris Christie's he's only there for one reason. He's only there
fat.
for one reason, because they have to have representation. He's there.
I firmly believe that there is like a weight minimum that they have to meet for the debate stage, and they brought in the whale Chris Christie to be that anchor for the debate stage. Okay. He's a piece of shit. I fucking hate that guy. First of all, you know how much I hate New Jersey. Okay, I hate New Jersey. It's like it's arguably the worst fucking state in this entire country, next to California. But governmentally, I know you love California. The weather's nice. That's the only thing anybody can ever say good to me about California. The weather's nice.
Okay. Well, I live here.
Fucking good.
That's another good reason.
That's a negative for me.
Hey, Brad, could you keep ranting about New Jersey while I step away for a moment?
Yeah, I firmly believe that New Jersey should pull at California and sink itself into the fucking ocean, because it is just the absolute crotch stain of America. 95% of people who come from New Jersey are pieces of shit. I do know a few people from New Jersey who I am big fans of, one of which actually runs a non-profit organization out of Philadelphia called Feed Philly, where they go out and actually kind of guerrilla style, at least they used to guerrilla style, put out, they used to feed homeless people. And this girl, her name's Francine. I'd love to actually get her on the podcast if possible. She runs this organization called Feed Philly, and I mean, they feed homeless people and stuff like that. It's a good organization. She's from New Jersey. She's fine. But 95% of New Jersey and people from New Jersey are dog shit.
Okay.
So
Chris Christie included. Let's talk winners and losers about last night. What do you... I think Nikki Haley...
Do you want to go winners first?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And in that sense, sure, let's do it. I think Nikki Haley overperformed. I think she did great.
She did great. She had one of the highest increases in Google search counts, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, after last night's debates. So they have to be wins. They absolutely have to be wins. I think where she's making her mistake is that she's continually attacking Vivek Ramaswamy.
I don't know that that's a mistake, because I think you can't let that guy just have the entire stage to himself all night, because he is fucking wrong. Now, you probably agree with him on some of his foreign policy stuff, but I'm glad somebody was there to tell him he doesn't know a goddamn thing about it.
So she did call out his foreign policy, and I didn't get to that part of the debate, so I didn't see it. I do fully intend on going back and watching.
The highlights, at least, yeah.
Yeah, at least those pieces. And one of the things that she said that I wholeheartedly disagree with is that maybe it was Mike Pence that said it. It's not time to vote in somebody who's going to learn on the job.
That might have been Mike Pence.
Yeah, it was either him or Nikki Haley, because she obviously has a lot of experience with this as well, being the head of the United Nations. Things like that.
No, she was the ambassador to the United
Nations. So I don't disagree with them in the sense that he does not have a lot of foreign policy. But would you? Like, if you are an what they call an America First, which everybody should be America First, to be honest, in its actual stance, where you want to spend your money here domestically before you do it anywhere internationally, which the U.S. does not do. I can't disagree there, in the sense, like, if he believes that, and that is kind of the crux of his foreign policy is America First, I can't disagree.
But he is all but endorsing, even though he's running against the guy, the last guy who was a so-called American First president, but absolutely wasn't really.
He was
I
not.
mean,
He was not.
we had steel tariffs. We had all kinds of tariffs,
Right.
trade wars.
But these motherfuckers don't believe that, dude.
I know.
They'll also defend tariffs on China. Okay, but
Biden still has the tariffs in place.
right, it's like all the things that Biden said that Trump did wrong. He didn't fix it.
Not
like
the stuff
Trump,
he liked.
the tax cuts. They didn't fucking change the tax
Well,
cuts.
those are no, they didn't. But they're set to expire. They're going to sunset.
Yeah, they're going to sunset, but chances are they're going to pass them again. I fully
not.
believe that. Now the business tax cuts that he did, making them go from 35% down to 21%, they were implemented permanently, I believe. That was what was voted on, I imagine, back in the Trump era. But
Salt also.
I don't know.
You know?
Yeah, the salt tax thing. Like, these are things that they just keep bringing into play to get votes. They don't actually have any real world change to them, you know. They're temporary. And why would you make something like that temporary? If it's good for the country, why would you make it temporary? Oh, because you want to fucking have policy. Like, you want to have policy, like, points to go off of. I disagree with Vivek Ramaswamy in many ways. I believe, he believes in sending the U.S. military down to Mexico to wipe out the cartels. I do not agree with that.
That was strange. Like,
yes,
I'm going to invade Mexico. Like, what?
I knew about that policy before those debates ever happened. I've been following him for a while now, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that policy. It's, me, not our problem. It's only our problem in the sense that they bring in drugs, but if, in my opinion, we decriminalize all drugs, that kind of eliminates black market. It just is what it is.
Well, okay, so let's not lose track of what we were trying to do here. I know you've only looked on social media and only saw part of the debate, but who do you think won last night?
I would have to go with Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley. They had the most searches on Google, and that's fortunately or unfortunately a huge deal, because they're going to start to garner more attention. People are going to start reading about them, not even their policies. They're not going to go to their websites and read what they stand for. They're going to, see the clips and the snippets. And Ramaswamy's been on fucking CNN.
He's been
everywhere, dude. And he was only polling at like 7%. I'd be interested to see the next round of polling. Probably puts him around 14 or 15%. I think we're going to start to lose people like Doug Burgum, who surprised everybody at like 7% polling, and nobody even knows who the fuck he is.
He's interesting.
Well, he showed up on stage. He like tore his Achilles or some shit, and showed up and obviously started speaking about that kind of shit. But he's a businessman, first and foremost, and he reminds me more of what's that fuckface's name from Starbucks, who I actually met him once, who ran for president in 2016, I think it was. No,
yeah,
2020. He had to run in 2020. Because I met him in Vegas at like a work event. He was like a keynote speaker at this thing I went to.
Howard Schultz?
Yeah, that's it. And he was handing out free copies of his stupid fucking book that I didn't read, but I probably still have sitting around my house somewhere. Doug Burgum kind of reminds me a little bit of him.
Yeah. Howard Schultz is libtard Doug Burgum in every way possible.
Yeah, and it's just not going to go anywhere. Like he's going to fall off, even though he was polling well. Tim Scott, kind of a little bit of a loser.
Loser of the whole night. Yep. Actually, he's the one who has probably the most money of anybody, and he is like done. Like he wants to win Iowa.
He's very well spoken.
I love the guy. I think he's great. I think he's a really nice guy.
I don't think I had ever heard him actually talk about anything before, and he was very well spoken. They didn't give him enough time, in my opinion.
The problem, it's his fault, though. It's his fault.
He was, from what I saw, he was speaking in a lot of like false narratives and things like that. But
he was the one who lost the night. So that's what I was going to ask you next: is who lost? Because I think it was Tim Scott. Because Tim Scott has such a high ceiling. Like he's a great candidate on the road. He's like energetic and nice. People like him. And then he goes on the debate. It's like not even a debate for him. It's like, is it my turn?
Right, but like how much of it is that they don't give them the time? Like even the candidates themselves just focus on the people who are polling ahead of them and try to destroy them so that they can poll better than they can for the next round.
It's the fault of the Republican National Committee because those people are fucking losers. And they get too many people. First of all, the threshold is way too low. So you got too many people on stage. And then half the people are on stage are people like Ramaswamy or
I think it was like
Christie.
3%.
Yeah, like, or remember the last time when during the 2016, like there was like 2 debate stages because there were like 20 candidates, and it's like, what are you doing? So like the RNC,
those were funny to watch though, because Trump just destroyed everybody.
Yeah.
But see, that's part of the problem that I have, right? Is they set out these like limitations, and they shouldn't. You could have very viable candidates that just aren't getting the numbers. Like back in 2016, the Libertarian Party sued the Presidential Debates Commission for debate access and saying that like you've set forth all of this like criteria. Well, CNN, which was one of the big polls for them at the time, for the Libertarian Party, completely excluded the 18 to 35 demographic to basically make it look like libertarians weren't polling enough to get into the debates. And they sued the Presidential Debate Commission, and basically what happened is they said, we are a private entity. We are not publicly owned. We're not owned by the government. We can do whatever we want and set forward whatever rules that we want. So since they're basically a private business, I would agree with that on a constitutional basis, but we're talking about the ability to get into elections. And that's fucked up, man. Like, we need to have more parties in there, at least in the debates. Sure, if you want to make them jump through hoops to get on the fucking ballot, like the Green Party and the Libertarian Party have to do, they typically end up in all 50 states on the ballot. If you want to have them jump through some fucking hoops to like get on ballots, fine, but they should be on the debate stages. If you take the top 4 parties, which would be your Republicans, your Democrats, your Libertarians, and your Green Party,
and your independents,
at least, well, you can't really, because like independent can mean almost anything, right? Like it's not really a party. You're just not party affiliated. So you're gonna choose between whoever's there. Like nobody runs really as an independent unless you're like Bernie Sanders. But at least you would have more voices on the debate stage. Well, but they don't want that to happen.
Okay, but the counterpoint, and this is different because it's an RNC primary, so the Republicans control their primary. Fair. My problem with it is that the RNC intelligentsia, whatever, they don't put enough restrictions in place, and you get these. How was last night productive for anybody? You know what I mean?
It wasn't.
Like you've got way too many people on stage, and I'm saying like you are the RNC. You could choose not to have Vivek Ramaswamy on the debate stage.
I would argue that all debates politically are pointless.
That's
Because
why
nothing ever happens. Like
you
even
are right.
even if you go back to what Biden versus Trump, nothing happened. There wasn't any like sound policy debate. Nothing. They
Well,
just like insulted each other.
it was horrible. It was horrific. You know, there was Ron DeSantis was offering to debate Gavin Newsom one on one. That I think is a worthwhile debate to have to see. Okay, let's debate those ideas and see who comes out on top, or see
But
whose ideas win the day.
After his performance in last night's debate, I would actually probably say it's a bad idea.
I don't think he
believe
did.
it or not,
I thought he
Gavin
did
Newsom
mediocre.
on TV is very well spoken.
I know.
He is.
Believe
I hate
me,
him.
I know
I
it.
hate his fucking policies, but he's very well spoken and knowledgeable about the bullshit he's peddling. Ron
He's a person
DeSantis
who's ready to step in for.
Is not as well spoken.
I disagree with you there too. I think Ron DeSantis is well spoken on policy matters. I think maybe what you're trying to say is like he's not charismatic when he says it.
That yeah. He
Like, he's
kind of
not-
sounds like a weenie. It's like
He does sound kind of like a weasel.
yeah. He looks like a frat boy weasel for sure.
Meatball Ron. I don't think he did as bad as you say he did, but you and I are not the people who matter. And Washington Post had a poll after the debate, and guess who got 29%?
DeSantis.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Well, good for him.
Followed by
mean, good for
Ramaswamy
him.
with 26.
I'm not going to vote for him. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to. Like, even if he's the nominee and I don't hate Ron DeSantis, I'm not going to vote for him. I can tell you that. I just don't believe in voting for the two-party system because I would actually like the system to change versus continuing down the fucking path that we've been going for 50-plus years. But, I mean, good for him. I find one thing funny about the debates is basically everybody had a different hand signal to try and, like, figure, like, what was it? Clinton had, like, the thumb thing. Like, that was, like, a big thing.
Well,
and then this was Donald Trump's, like, thing.
Yeah, this is actually goes back a long way with politicians because you're trying to point and use your thumb, but you're trying not to look aggressive, and so that's why they do it that way.
That's true, because this looks like way
that's
more
bad.
like aggressive than this.
Not bad.
But if I was just like, you motherfucker, would you
I'd
find
be
that
like-
aggressive?
I'd be like,
If I was like, you
okay.
motherfucker versus you motherfucker, I guess that
it's a
does look a
tale as
little
old as
less
time.
aggressive. Yeah. Interesting.
I will say on this poll, Nikki Haley came in third place with 15%. So Ramaswamy second with 26%. So,
Wow. That's still a big jump. You said, what was DeSantis? 30,
he was 29%.
29%. Oh, wow. So it actually wasn't that big of a difference.
So when I watched a lot of interviews after the polls too with you know how like CNN will get like 8 people who are Republicans and they'll go like, what did you think about the debate? Most of those people said they liked Ramaswamy and DeSantis. It was all DeSantis and then Ramaswamy, which
Yeah.
you would find surprising considering he kind of just wasn't really a factor last night.
I really don't think that he was. Ramaswamy definitely was. People were attacking him viciously last night, and this is, again, just in the first 45 minutes that I watched. I didn't even get into all of it. But that being said, like, he was on fucking Bill Maher. Like,
I listened to that.
Mike
Did you?
Pence isn't on fucking Bill Maher. Yeah, I did.
Did you look-
I did. And even Bill Maher was like, I like a lot of what you're saying.
But you're full of shit and you're too young.
Yeah, like, and that's kind of what he went with. And Bill Maher is obviously very historically Democrat and liberal, but even he was like, everybody else kind of sucks. Like, even Trump or Biden, like, he's not a huge Biden supporter either, only for the fact that as long as it's not Donald Trump, he's kind of like doesn't care who it is. But
he doesn't have a home anymore like a lot of us because he gave $1 million to Barack Obama's campaign famously, and he was like that was his guy, and his party has moved so far to the left of him
He
that
hates
he can't even. Yeah, he can like that. you listen to him every episode. He's like, he just it's gross for him, you know. And it's I like that because it shows he's consistent.
Yeah, it was tough to watch him during the Trump era though, because it's like blah, 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 like same thing over and over. Fucking Trump, 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 Trump. Just like every other media outlet was Trump, 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 Trump.
I think he knows that though, in a way that other people do not. Like, I think he knows how he acted during the Trump years. An example of the opposite of this would be like a Howard Stern who just goes left with everybody else and goes crazy with everybody else, and then he can never like calibrate, and it's just like kind of sad to watch that decline happen. I don't know. I think Maher. I've always liked Bill Maher since like way back in the day.
I do like Bill Maher. I don't have to agree with his politics to like him necessarily, and I for the most part don't.
I really don't.
He seems way more of a centrist now than he did before, but it's mostly just because I do, especially socially, lean more left than anything else. It's just fiscally, I can't possibly. I don't believe the government should be spending our money on frivolous dumb shit, but that's,
in that case, you're politically homeless because that's what the Republicans do too.
And I am, because like the Libertarian Party, even like I've said this before, I really don't agree with like some of their shit. Like they can't even come up with a coherent stance on abortion. Like some people are into it, some aren't, and it seems to me like it's where you fall on a religious spectrum.
It's the most libertarian issue you could have. Like the fact that they can't have a platform or identify what they believe is totally libertarian.
Right. And that's okay. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion about things.
I don't care.
But as you know, like I'm not a single issue voter. You know,
I would be if somebody would just come out and say it's time to invade Canada or Greenland. Either of those two.
Well, remember when Trump tried to buy Greenland?
Well, that's what sucked. Is it could have been
if
it was anybody.
Fuck it.
It's literally a good idea for both parties. The problem was the crazy guy was the one who proposed it.
Sure.
Unfortunately, that's why it fell apart. It's actually a good idea. They have a lot of natural resources, and they could use our protection.
I agree. But the last thing I'll say about losers from that debate last night is America. America lost last night.
America loses after every one of these because we are given this. But that's
right. Nothing actually gets accomplished from these things. Like they're ratings
Look at the DNC. That one was just as bad. I mean, Kamala Harris called Joe Biden a racist right to his face on the stage, and it's like, what the fuck is this all about?
And a rapist. And then she turns around and takes the fucking VP nomination. Like,
well, no, he's stupid enough to offer it to her.
Right, but she took it.
I know.
That's actually worse. Of course he offered it to her. She's a woman of color. Of course he offered it to her.
He could have given it to Tammy Duckworth. I know.
Like, you now support a racist rapist in office because you want status. Like, how is that not completely fly in the fucking face of everything the Democratic Party has been standing for the last few years? Like, but and her response to it was, "It's a debate." Yeah, because if you and I are debating like you and I do here, on the podcast sometimes, I'm not like, well, you're a rapist. I don't say that. I don't say that about you. No, why the fuck would I say that about you and then expect you to still be friends with me? Like,
I had a conversation the other day where a grown ass man told me that he said that's not true. He cut me off and said that's not true. And I was like, the fuck? Who the fuck are you to tell me what's not true and what is? By the way, I was right. But, like, normal people should not be, like, taking on these characteristics in the...
No.
It's gross.
And let's not mince things here. Like, I've said some grotesque shit to you, but all in good fun. Like, that's what you and I do. We break each other's balls. Like,
This is, like, the public, out in public kind of stuff,
right?
You know?
Like, between us, there's no bad blood or ill will in any capacity. Like, we're friends. We bust each other's balls like so many friends do. But, like, on a national debate stage, you called him a racist and a rapist.
That's bad. And also, it didn't
now you're vice
work.
president. And arguably, the worst vice president since Mike Pence.
I mean, at least Mike Pence didn't put 1,000 people in
Right.
jail for marijuana.
And at least he saved America by certifying the election, I guess. Well,
Did what he had to do, but man,
for anything, he aided in the decline of America by certifying the election.
he sure did.
It was the right thing to do, but I mean, he aided
Things
in
are
the
better
decline of
now.
it.
Well, also he didn't. I don't know. Mike Pence was the vice president under Donald
I
Trump.
fucking hate that guy. He believes in conversion therapy. Anybody
he
who
does.
believes in conversion therapy should automatically be fucking disqualified from being the president.
Well, at least he's honest about his faith on the stage. I mean,
guess.
it'd be worse if he hides it.
I
Okay,
guess.
next debate's going to be September 27th. So, and I think they have restrictions in place to limit the amount of people that'll be there. I don't know what it means or what it will mean, but
Tim Scott's gone. Doug Burgum's probably gone.
Tim Scott's got I don't know if it's going to be based on polling. Tim Scott's got the money. Tim Scott wants to win Iowa. Chris Christie wants to win New Hampshire. That's why he won't stop.
Christie will be in because he's a well-known name, and he opposed Trump for the most part. He'll get in for those like never Trumpers from a polling perspective.
It's just a wait and see about how this all shakes out because Haley did really good, but I also like Nikki Haley, and I'm trying not to be biased there. Like, I mean, I do like her as a candidate, so I'm
like
not trying to put my thumb on
some
the scale.
of the things that she said last night. I don't. But I don't think she's
I think
the worst
she's
candidate.
extremely qualified for
Yes.
to be, and I think Ron DeSantis is too. I just think he has mismanaged his campaign the whole time, and
Dude, he's
now we're
still
here.
getting funding. I think he changed campaign managers or something, though, didn't he?
He did.
Like, because he was like falling in the polls, but still spending like way more money than anybody else. But was like,
Stop shaking your mic.
I'm trying not to. My dog is like has her fucking head on my cord here. So, and she has a cone on her head because she just got fixed. So I'm trying to fix it. There we go. So that she didn't tear my mic out of my computer.
My girlfriend's dog has the cone thing, and it's like having a little thing with a knife on its head.
A blind dog, yeah.
Yeah, just walking
She
around
can't
and cutting
see
your
shit.
leg.
What are you doing?
Well,
Don't
looking
be
forward to meeting that dog.
eating this kind of shit. Yeah, man, I'm excited. So Aaron is coming to visit old Pennsylvania.
I am.
And I'm looking forward to it. We're going to go see Sum 41,
The Offspring.
and The Offspring, and Simple Plan, and get hammered.
Pretty much.
So it's going to be fun.
I guess we should probably do what we always do at the end of these things, which is just you watching or doing anything.
I'm struggling to watch stuff right now, man. Even on my list, I'm down to shit that's either like not out for like video on demand yet, or it's like low budget or stuff that like I just don't really want to get into. So I'm kind of like struggling to watch some stuff right now, I must say. I tried to watch this thing called Painkiller on Netflix, which is about basically the OxyContin, epidemic and stuff. And it has like Taylor Kitsch in it. It has Matthew Broderick.
You hate him.
I do. And Matthew Broderick. So I was
Who
like,
killed a man one time.
right. So I'm like, this could be all right, but it's like, I don't want to say propaganda because the Sackler family are pieces of shit, but it's like a giant propaganda film where it's like, well, the Sackler family did this, but they also did these things to get there, which were equally evil, and just kind of like makes this whole thing about Purdue Pharma. And I'm just like,
Lays it on pretty thick.
Yeah, and I'm not even through the first fucking episode, and it is hard to watch because it is just like thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. That's like Purdue Sackler, like all this other shit. And it just keeps doing that, and I'm just like, I'm good. It's not that, again, not that it's propaganda. Like all of these things are probably true, but they're highly sensationalized in this movie. So I'm just like, I'm good. Um, like I said, movie wise, like on my list, let's see, I hit Kandahar, which was actually pretty good. I can't complain.
It's one of those Gerard Butler movies. He's got like 8 of them a year that come out, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this?
Dude, he's smashing it right now as far as like action movies go. He's really fucking just killing it right now. So I watched that. I watched Black Demon, which is like a shark movie, where they're on like a defunct oil rig, and there's this like,
Oh boy.
yeah, don't watch it.
So let me stop you
Don't watch
there.
it. There's this movie called Oregon Trail that I watched.
Come on.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit something. We have a friend. His name is Pito. That's a nickname. And when I first met him, I had this idea for a movie. And this movie was basically people out on like the Oregon Trail, kind of come across like basically like a Native American spirit that starts like scalping them and like killing them and things like that, and they're going through this whole thing. Well, that's kind of like what they made this movie out to kind of seem like. There was people on the Oregon Trail that were like doing these kinds of things, and it was kind of wild. And I was like, I wrote this fucking movie. We literally have a fucking script for this movie that we wrote like 7 or 8 years ago, and here this fucking movie comes out, and it's kind of part of that, right? It wasn't good in any capacity. I'm pretty sure my script was way better. Not that I'm biased or anything, but I tried to watch it, and it was not good. But as so many of these movies on my list, they're also not good. I went back and rewatched the first 2 Insidious movies.
That first one, 75% of that
Killer.
movie is really, really good.
Yeah. It's the very, very end where you kind of like lose me a little bit. And then I went and watched the second one just so that I could watch Insidious The Red Door, which is the newest one that just came out. And it was something. It was fine. Probably wasn't. Definitely not one of the worst movies I've seen this year. That's for sure. We mutually watched Cobweb. I know you watched that as well. Not impressive in any capacity.
That movie's biggest problem for me is that I couldn't see anything. It was so dark. Couldn't fucking see what was going on the screen.
And it just, the monster thing was like dumb. It was kind of just dumb.
Stupid movie.
It was kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Mama.
No.
Came out like mid-2000s or so. It wasn't inherently a bad movie. It was about like these 2 kids that get adopted by their aunt because their parents die. But these kids had lived on their own for like months before they were found, and it's because they were being taken care of by like a demon. Kind of just reminded me a little bit of that to an extent. But the guy who plays Homelander was in it, so that's what got me to watch it.
Yeah, and the actress that was the mom, I love her too. She's fantastic.
Yeah, no, the casting was solid, and
I
think
they were terrifying.
Yeah,
They
the
were
movie
weird.
was actually like decent at the beginning, and then it was like when the whole thing is revealed, you're like, fuck, they ruined it. And then I watched this movie called The Breach, which was really weird. This guy seemed to like invent this machine, and people were finding these like just skins. Like, I don't know if you remember the old marijuana commercial where like the chick is like sitting on a couch like this and she's completely deflated. It's just like her skin laying flat. It kind of looked like that. And it was called The Breach. So it was kind of funny from that perspective. Horrible B movie, but yeah, that's mostly what I've been getting into.
Well, I have my letterboxed up. I watched this movie by Akira Kurosawa called Drunken Angel. I gave it 3 stars. It was just about a couple of drunkards in post, like right after the bomb in World War II and everything, and it's just that everybody just like barely getting by. I really only watched it because I wanted to see what post World War II Japan looked like, and I got that out of it. And then I watched The Cook, which was from 1918, but it's with Fatty Arbuckle, who is hilarious, and it was really funny. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I've just been playing a lot of Slay the Spire, which is like a card game. It's like a card game where you go on runs up to fight enemies, and then if you die, you die, and then you start over again, and it's just like every run is like completely different. So that's kind of a neat game. I'm really excited for Starfield, which comes out here in a couple weeks. Actually,
You know what? Me too.
yeah,
I'm gonna play it. I have to finish Dead Space. I'm just stuck on that stupid fucking thing where you're trying to move the marker, but I'm trying to finish that up, and then I can play Starfield.
Yeah, I think that game is gonna actually hit. It's gonna be good, and then I mean, because there really hasn't been a lot coming out recently, so I've just been kind of going back to my old whatever. Like Age of Empires 4 just came out on Xbox, and that game's really cool.
We could play Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I downloaded it, but I haven't played it yet.
I downloaded it as well, but I haven't played it. We could probably try to get into that. That could be interesting.
Just try it. I'm willing to try it.
Do you like experimental horror films where they're like working on different things?
I mean, tell me what you mean by that. Give me an example of one.
I watched this movie earlier this year. I paid to watch this movie, but it's on Hulu now. So if you have Hulu, I would highly recommend watching it. It's called Skinamarink. Watch the trailer for it. It's not a horror movie in the sense where you're gonna be jump scared, like kind of things. The whole thing is just eerie and leaves a lot up to interpretation of events.
Okay, I do. I actually think
this movie was made for $15,000 and actually made, I think, like $2.5 million box office for an experimental horror movie. So it's now that it's on Hulu, I will say it's probably a little bit longer than it needs to be. Maybe it might only be like 90 minutes, but still, it makes it feel kind of long because it's very it's a slog. Like it's pretty slow. You don't even really see a ton of like main characters' faces. Like it's a very experimental horror movie. But I like that kind of stuff. Like you're into more art house films and stuff like that too. So I actually do think you'll like this from that perspective. And I think it will invoke in you this like fear maybe from when you were like a kid and you were in a house alone and you had to like, just deal with being home alone in the dark and like it's late at night and all this other stuff. And again, there's no...
Well, I like movies that induce paranoia, and it's hard to do that. But when they do it and they hit, like Mother with Jennifer Lawrence, like that movie makes me feel paranoid.
So this movie will do that too. I will say, I think from because you like just general filmmaking like I do, from a camera perspective, you're going to be like, ugh. But that's because it's kind of shot to look like a 90s like home camera like situation, and you're just gonna be staring into dark rooms a lot, but you're while you're watching this movie you're gonna be like, is something there, is something not there, like you're kind of left like wondering what happened in this movie a little bit. And then Pito and I actually both watched this and we talked about it, and I rather enjoyed the movie, but you have to just be a fan of like people trying something different, and obviously it succeeded, considering it was made for 15 grand. It made like I said around I think 2.5 million. It might only have been 1.5 million. Either way, it's a win. But this won at the box office for itself, and I think you'll like it because it's intentionally Like they intentionally made the video kind of grainy and things like that to kind of give you that aperture in the film. So,
Do you like short films at all?
I'll watch anything, man. I watched a short film that is The Division, the game The Division. I don't know if you remember that video game. Amazon had The Division short film. I think it was only like 25 minutes long or something like that, which gave you a lot of what you get in the video game, like, that kind of shit. So it's like, it's fine. Yeah, I don't mind short film.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is because Criterion Channel has their streaming platform, and they have tons and tons of short films on there. And I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole fairly recently, and I watched one that was called it's called A Family Nightmare, and it's about 8 minutes long. And this is why I appreciate short films, because in that 8 minutes it does so much. It's so eerie. It's home video footage from the director when he was a kid, and there's all these, like, it's kind of in slow motion a little bit. It's a little dreamy, and it just shows sort of these like little moments throughout his childhood where the adults in the room are acting out. They're like drunk, or one of the ladies like falls or whatever. And then at the end of the movie, he shows each of them and how they died. And like all these people from his family were addicts, and they all ended up dying. And it was like this like 8 minute thing that was like really like, fuck, dude. Like it was heavy by the end, because it's just them having fun. They're partying in these videos, man. And then you're like, yeah, this person died in a car accident, or this person overdosed, and that, none of them are around.
I would be interested to talk to you about this movie Skinamarink. So just watch it, and we don't even have to have a discussion here, but I'd like to talk to you about it, because I actually really liked your opinion on what happened in the whole movie. Like,
you know what?
How the whole situation started and everything else. Like, I would be very interested to see what your perspective is on the storyline as it stands.
Before we go, there is another movie. Actually, it's funny you just mentioned that, because there's another movie where I also didn't know how to interpret it. I don't know if I would ever recommend you watch it. It's called After Sun. It came out last year. It's a slog of a movie.
I've heard about it recently, but I thought it just came out this year, because I've just seen a lot of articles about it, but I'm not sure.
It's one of those, like, by the end, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know what happened. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. I wanted to end the podcast by just saying that one of our friends had something really tragic happen, and
super fan.
I just wanted to say that he's in our thoughts, and we're thinking about him, and yeah, hang in there.
Yeah, hang in there, buddy. Shout out to Superfan.
All right.
You know who you are.
Well, I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, see you, buddy.
Bye.
Peace.